and this is our introduction to veganism talk. Now it's going to be quite broad because there's a lot of stuff to get through really, and there's a lot of entailed and very complex information that I'm really not going to touch on at all. So we're going to look at the main reasons to begin with why people become vegan. And so before I go into what vegans are and the philosophy of veganism, we'll have a look at why people decide to become vegan. And for most people, the really sort of like the most, I suppose, motivating force is the animals. Because once we actually see how animals are farmed, not just in the UK but all over the world, and the appalling treatments they suffer, you know, just because people want to eat their meat and milk, dairy, cheese, then we do think, no, how awful. What we've seen, we can't unseen. And I think once we've actually seen it, we actually think to ourselves, well, how can we go on contributing to this particular suffering? Because of course, the reason why they do suffer is because we buy their products. And so of course, well, obviously, elimination, if we don't buy the products, then of course, you know, we'll be eliminating the suffering. Two other really good reasons, in fact, yeah, very, very, very important reasons, are our planet. So if our planet is to stand a chance of survival, and of course, you know, there's a lot of young people here, and we want the world to flourish. Yes, I'm looking at you. I'm young, I am still young. And so we need to have a world that can support wildlife, can support life of all sorts for many, many generations to come. One of the main reasons why the environment is not flourishing is because we're farming animals. Agriculture is the biggest destroyer of the planet in our time. And of course, a third reason is us. A vegan diet is a natural diet, and it is so much better for our health, for our longevity, for our energy, for our enthusiasm, and for our psychology. Because if you live your life in a way that tries not to hurt anybody else, then you feel so much better. You feel so much better and lighter, knowing that you're not contributing to so much misery in the world. Anyway, so being vegan, and a lot of people, I think, confuse being vegan with being plant-based. Being vegan is a philosophy, and what we eat is just a part of that philosophy. So the vegan philosophy, it seeks to withdraw, it's a personal disengagement from all forms of cruelty towards animals, whether that's eating them, whether that's wearing them, whether that's using them for sport or entertainment. Veganism doesn't exploit in any of those ways. And by extension, of course, what happens then is that we support products that don't test on animals, and products that don't actually have animal ingredients, and products where animals haven't been used in any way in the manufacture of things. There's a board somewhere about testing on animals, and it's not out, but we'll put it out later if anybody wants to have a look at it. Because obviously what we do to animals, we shut them away from the light and the air, and we do terrible things to them, particularly with experiments. You know, many of them are unnecessary, but I'm not going to go to that into in great detail. Anyway, so what we do is we do that in as much as it is practicable and possible, because it isn't possible to avoid all animal suffering, because, you know, we don't actually have any bearing on what happens with our taxes, of course, you know, and what other people choose to spend our money on. But as far as possible, it's a personal withdrawal, a disengagement. from anything really that harms animals. So that's what veganism is, and I think that most people really would actually say that they love animals. That everybody, really does love animals. We have a cat in which we sort of like dote, and the dog that lies in front of the fire on the hearth, snoring away and peacefully sleeping, and on our lap, and we just love and adore them. And we really forget that when we look into the eyes of them, really their love, and we feel their care, we see them when they're scared, we see them when they're excited, we see them when they're loving, we see them when they're angry. We cannot fail, when looking in their eyes, to see the eyes of all the other animals that we abuse. Because in suffering, all animals are equal. Everybody feels pain, And when I say animals, I mean animals are those which are deemed to be sentient, so they have a central nervous system, a spine, and can suffer pain. And obviously can express a range of emotions. And we all know that. All of us can keep pets. Do we all keep pets here? Most of us, we all keep pets. And so it's clear and it's obvious. But what happens, I think, from birth is that we're taught, we're programmed to actually think that animals are here for us. They're here to eat, they're here to wear, they're here to experiment. They're actually born for us, for the human race to do something with. Quite wrong, of course, because they have inherent value all of their own. And from the beginning, of course, I think we've all eaten meat probably. Is there anybody who never ever eaten meat? I don't think so. Because our parents have always encouraged us to, get that down you, that's wonderful, that'll do a whole lot of good. You're not getting your pudding until you finished it either. So there've been all this sort of culture of eating meat and dairy. And parents really encouraged me, looking at adverts on the TV, of course, where, eating meat and dairy is the thing. This is what we do. We don't see abuse, because eating meat and dairy is what everybody does. And adverts are just terrible. If you remember seeing any of the Tesco love story adverts, and of course, they're really sort of linking this terrible destruction which they hide away from us with how much you love somebody. If you really love your son or your daughter or whomever it is, Auntie Millie coming from South Africa, sit her down and feed her on a nice leg of lamb, because that's lovely, that's comforting. Okay, that is something that will bond your love. So we're taught, and of course, our parents are giving us this food. So they're our role models at a particular time in our life. They are whom we trust. We love them. So whatever they say and whatever they do is right in our eyes. So if they're giving us a lump of lamb or a piece of beef or a chicken leg, it's a good thing to do because they're doing it. It must be okay. In fact, we don't even see it. I remember going back to being a child, and my mum used to say, we're having a nice roast leg of lamb today, or we're having a shoulder. And you don't actually hear and see that reality. It just becomes, what? Like we're going to have a tin of baked beans. It isn't, you don't see or connect with an animal. And so the human race basically is programmed to accept this cruelty because it is championed as being the normal thing to do and a desirable thing to do. And in fact, of course, all the meat that we cook, tastes very nice because of what we do to it. We season it and we roast it nicely, we baste it with all sort of nice things so that it doesn't actually taste like the piece of raw flesh that it would be had we not doctored it to taste pleasant. So, it's there, there's so many reasons why, society eats meat. It's a big social thing as well. When you go out, let us eat. And there's always meat there. Meat is wealth. Meat is doing well in so many countries. So it's very difficult to actually sort of step off that and to actually look at the facts behind the production of meat. And when I say meat, I mean the flesh of an animal or the secretion of an animal. No animal wants to die for us. You know, all living beings quake and tremble fearfully when they're in danger, and they cry when they're in pain. And any animal at the point of slaughter isn't willingly going to lie down and have its throat cut for you. And that's basically the way most lambs, pigs, cows are slaughtered. And so we don't see that, of course, because the meat and dairy industries don't want you to see that, because of course it's a very gross thing. Human beings, this is a point about really human beings are perhaps inherently not supposed to eat meat. We have a horrible distaste of blood. You know, we don't like it. We don't like it. If you were to see, you know, somebody you love cut, or anybody's blood, somebody bleeding, you would find that abhorrent. You would find screams abhorrent if anybody was to slice a part of an animal. If you saw your pet in a road accident, pouring with blood after being hit by a car, you would find that dreadful. Of course. But all of this happens behind closed doors and behind windowless sheds. When we see animals, usually we see them, animals that we eat, we see them wrapped up in a piece of plastic on a supermarket shelf, and it bears no resemblance to the animal whatsoever. And it is so common, of course, you know, everybody's walking about and wheeling their trolley with a piece of an animal's dead flesh there in their cart. That's my phone.
Maybe someone's lost, Jenny.
Yeah. So every effort is made to ensure that we don't engage with the animal that is behind the flesh that we eat, because it doesn't actually sort of go down well with human beings. You know, if we talk about eating flesh, which is what we're doing, then it's got very savage implications. If we talk about meat, it's much better. You know, meat is okay. That's socially acceptable. But flesh eating has sort of a bit of cannibalism about it, doesn't it? Because, of course, it is exactly what it is. Okay, so having said that then, UK slaughters, you know, and the numbers, we can't even take them in, you know, they're so huge. Slaughters 1 billion chickens, 10 million pigs, and 2.6 million cattle a year. And the majority of these animals are all kept in intensive units. Now, an intensive unit is a place where animals are kept where the farmer can actually maximise profit, okay, with little outlay. If you keep a lot of animals all in one place, all together, you don't need to pay for so much space, you don't need to pay for grazing, and so forth. So it's a place where animals are seen as commodities, so they're crammed together with little space, and they're kept in pens, crates, or cages, and it prevents any sort of natural behaviour at all. For example, pigs whom incidentally have the intelligence of 3-year-old children. If you've got children, grandchildren, or little sisters, or you know children of 3, they're pretty savvy, you know, they're able to talk, they're able to laugh, they understand jokes, they're pretty smart. And pigs have that amount of intelligence. And what we do, we cram them into overcrowded sheds with nothing on the floor, where they have nothing to do. Now the boredom is completely horrendous. If you shut a 3-year-old child into a tiny room and stood them on a piece of concrete, how would they feel? There isn't any difference to the frustration and the boredom and the mindless hours that these animals must suffer. They're so closely crammed together, pigs, that they can't even lie down to sleep. So imagine that too, just standing on the barren floor, day after day, hour after hour, and all for the sake of a piece of bacon. Now, pigs also, when they're babies, they suffer terrible mutilations. So they have their tails docked and they have their teeth clipped without anaesthetic, and they cry so much because it's very painful for their babies. Awful to imagine, but pigs are kept for about 5 weeks, a month before they are about to give birth. The sows are put into a crate like this, which is called a farrowing crate. And the farmers say that a farrowing crate is the best place for pigs to suckle her babies, because she then might roll over and crush them. But she won't anyway. Mothers do not want to crush their babies. It's a natural instinct for them to nurture. So we have these tiny little piglets. I don't know if you can see from where you are. This is a farrowing crate. And there's Mummy. And all the little piglets are outside of the crate. And she actually has to suckle them through the bars. This is a mother. Motherhood is motherhood. Whether you're a cow, whether you're a pig, whether you're a human being, whether you're a chicken, it's natural for mothers to want to have a bond with their babies. And if you can imagine suckling your babies through some metal bars. So this is what we do with them. The piglets, Mummy has to stay here for 5 weeks. She cannot turn. This is not just one pig, this is across the board. So every piece of bacon you have would have started off with a mother like this. And she can't even turn her neck, or move in any way. She's just a milking machine, so she just lies there to provide milk for these babies. And they're weaned, they're taken away from her in about 3 to 4 weeks, and they're really not ready to leave their moms at 3 to 4 weeks. And as a result, these little babies, just 3 to 4 weeks old, they suffer diarrhea, terrible diarrhea, digestive problems. And they're fed on a daily regime of drugs and antibiotics just to keep them living, so that these babies, at 6 months old, the ones that survive, will be sent then to slaughter their babies. So these little piglets that are prime pieces of ham and bacon, and they will have started their life exactly like that. Mothers will go, so females also go for fattening, so they'll go into system again. So another area here that we're touching on with all farmed animals, because most of the antibiotics that we have in the world are fed to them, is that obviously they create a resistance to antibiotics. Are you going? Someone's here. Don't let them go. So,
there will be a recording if you want to catch up, girls.
all right. Oh, sorry to see you go.
Thank you so much for
Bye-bye.
inviting us.
Oh. antibiotics, of course, that affect our farm animals, find their way into the environment, find their way into our systems through rivers, lakes, seas, and, you know, food we eat, and of course render themselves impotent when it comes to curing diseases. So really it just comes down to how to keep farm animals healthy, because they don't live in healthy situations. So that's pigs, and I'm going to go on to dairy cows because I think it's probably the thing really that hurts people the most, because it's something that surprises them the most, and it's something which is unthinkable, particularly as women, mothers ourselves, many of us. When you slosh a bit of milk, cow's milk, into coffee or tea, there's no more thinking about it than that. It's just a bit of milk. We've always had milk, as your mother's told you it's good for you. So which is a bit of a myth, since it's full of pus and antibiotics and blood. So, but cows, obviously, to produce milk, must be pregnant. No mammal produces milk unless they're pregnant, and there's no difference between a cow and a human woman. So these cows that are specially bred for dairy, every 9 months is 9 months gestation period for a cow. So just like us, a human baby takes 9 months to grow to sort of full term in a mother's womb, a human mother's womb, and it's the same for a cow. Every 9 months she will be made pregnant again, and by artificial insemination. So an artificial insemination man will come along with bull's milk and will inject it into her vagina, sometimes with his arm, sometimes with a tool. She is never not pregnant. When she is pregnant, she is forced to give milk all of the time. And then when she has a baby, of course, the milk is required for human consumption. So the baby is a waste product. The mother isn't allowed to give her milk because it's needed for human beings. So the baby is taken away from the mother, usually hours after birth. And if you've ever, has anybody ever here heard a mother cow cry for her baby? I think you have, haven't you? It's the deepest, most mournful, demonic sounding of the world. I find it really hard. We were talking earlier about emotions, and she will cry and she will cry and she will cry and bellow, and they have been seen running after trailers with the babies in them, and to no effect, of course. If it's a male calf, and it's really hard to be, when I say things, and I'm sure as vegans when we do say things, it's really hard to believe how this actually does happen with humans. The male calves are shot at the head, or they are sent onto the continent and to be reared in field crates, because they're of no value to the farmer. Their meat isn't the sort of meat that is valuable, and also, of course, they're not going to produce milk, so they have to be done away with. Females will go into the system just like the mum. So they will go away, and every 5 months, every 9 months, they will be made pregnant. Unnaturally, of course, by artificial insemination. Time and time and time again. So she is forced to lactate and be pregnant. About 5 years. This has terrible consequences for the cow. Her teats become inflamed with the constant expressing of milk, and she has painful inflammations, mastitis, very often pussy. Some of the residue, of course, will be in the milk. She's injected with antibiotics, which again would be in the milk that we drink. So this is the life of a dairy cow. After about 5 years, in the wild, of course they were given to her about 20. After about 5 years, they're slaughtered for sheep meats, pies, dog food, cat food, low quality, low grade meat. But during that short, miserable life, obviously, she's given birth all of those times for 9 months, never at one point will she have experienced that wonderful bond between a child and its mother. So yes, so dairy is horrific, and I don't know, it's one of those things again, isn't it, when you think, would you like a drop of sheep milk, or dog milk, or cat milk? People would go, oh no, because we've been programmed to accept that cow's milk is okay. It's not even from a cow, is it? Cow's milk, just cow's milk. And when I've sort of worked in sort of like a cafe situation, people will always ask you for normal milk, please. Normal. What is normal? What's normal? About taking away a cow's milk. A cow. This is normal. But it is normal, and that's obviously what makes it all right. Because another reason why we eat dairy is because it's traditional. Everybody's always done it. Way back. So it's okay. Animals that are kept. This is all really, a handful of percentages of animals are not kept in these situations. Egg-laying hens, the only animal really that spend their entire life in a cage. In the wild, these hens, they would lay 15 to 20 eggs a year. In these intensive factory farms, tier upon tier upon tier of chicken hens, they're forced to lay 300 eggs a year. And now, apparently, they're trying to get them to produce 500 eggs a year. When in the wild they would just lay 15 to 20. Again, this is another sort of feminine issue too. Why should we be using the reproductive system, of any animal, to provide us with food we don't need? So there she is, poor chick. What they've done now, they've banned actually in England for quite a while now, battery cages for what they call enriched cages, because it came under huge criticism, the factory farm systems for egg-laying hens, because there used to be 8 to 10 in just a tiny little cage, which is where each hen would have this piece of paper, the space, A4 piece of paper to actually stand on. And hens, of course, couldn't do anything natural, would never see the light of day, smell the fresh air, would never be able to peck on the ground, would never be able to stretch their wings, and never be able to mate naturally. None of that. There was great criticism for that, and so it was decided that, okay, well, what we'll do is we'll provide these hens with enriched cages, and enriched cages now mean that they have one postcard sized more room than they had in the old battery